In the beginning, and once upon a time, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Why? Because all happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. And you need to know that I write this while sitting in the kitchen sink. And all of this happened more or less. I see some of you are looking confused. Do any of these lines sound familiar to you? They are opening lines to some of the greatest stories in Western literature, beginning with, of course, the first line of the creation story of Genesis. How about, it was the best of times, the worst of times? If you know it, call it out. Tale of Two Cities, right on. How about, all happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Anna Karenina, right. And just for the record, I did not start writing this sermon while sitting in the kitchen sink. That was Dodie Smith and her novel, I Capture the Castle. But all this happened more or less is from Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five. So great stories often begin with an opening line that grabs your attention, draws you in, and encourages you to find yourself in the tale that is unfolding before your very eyes. Now, great opening lines don't always prefigure great literature. How many of you know this line? It was a dark and stormy night. Written by one Edward George Bulwer Lytton. Who knows anything else about his novel except for that one line? Of course, professional writers know that creating an opening line for your novel is important because it is the first opportunity to draw the reader in. And we know this is true for film as well. I love film, and I'm always looking for what is the opening shot, and how does that set the mood, and then the lighting and the focus, the camera work, all of that is the beginning of the story. And if it's not compelling, then the audience may be tempted to let their minds wander to something else. Of course, it's true for music, too. Everybody knows the first four notes from Beethoven. What is that? Very good, yeah. You gotta sing it more robustly, though. Dun, 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 right? So, no pressure. This is my very first Sunday with you at All Souls, in person and in our virtual congregation. And this marks the beginning of a new chapter of All Souls' story. And it's a new chapter in mine, too. One that has the bones of every narrative that ever has been written. And one that is being written right now, in this moment. It's a brand new story we're starting. Not only because I'm not Galen, your former minister, I'm not male. I'm the first woman you've had serving in the role of senior minister. But this is the place where our various stories intersect. My story as your targeted senior minister, and the rich tapestry of stories that is All Souls. The 20 million stories of the Naked City and our national and global stories all coming together to connect and inform and co-create each other. This is the place where, as the theologian Frederick Buechner once said in his book, Alphabet of Grace, and this is a quote, he says, "At its heart, most theology, like most fiction, is essentially autobiography." Aquinas, Calvin, Barth, Tillich, and I would add to Buechner's list of ministers and theologians, Pamela Patton, Galen Gingrich, Forrest Church, Odette Fulbright, Cheryl Walker, Anna Levy-Lyons, Walter Kring, Henry Whitney Bellows, and so many more, are all working out their theologies in their own ways and in their own language. And they're all telling us the stories of their lives. And if you press them hard enough, even at their most cerebral and forbidding, you find the experience of flesh and blood, a human face smiling or frowning or weeping or covering its eyes before something has happened. Buechner continues, I cannot talk about God or sin or grace, for example, without at the same time talking about those parts of my own experience where these ideas become compelling and real. So this autobiographical understanding of theology is the idea that your own personal experience is the foundation of your belief system, and that our theological and spiritual yearnings, they're not created ex nihilo, but out of the very warp and woof of the fabric that composes our lives. And our lives, of course, are made of stories. Now, we also know from Literature 101 that there are a few narrative templates that form the basis for most novels and plays and films and television series, and I would argue our church life as well. The classical templates are, of course, comedy and tragedy, and almost any narrative can be seen through those two lenses, but there's many more. Here's a quick refresher for a couple of the best known. One of those narratives is The Quest, that journey of discovery that is marked by struggle and searching and ultimately finding home. You know, it's a story I hear over and over again when people gather up their courage to come check out a Unitarian Universalist church for the very first time, and they say things like, I think I've been looking for you my whole life. I never knew you existed, but when I heard that first sermon, I realized this is what I'd been searching for all along. How about another narrative, Overcoming the Monster? That's a well-known storyline from films like Star Wars, Darth Vader, or Sauron, Lord of the Rings, with the hero battling forces of good and evil with nothing less than the entire universe at stake. And I would say that although there are no Krakens or Godzillas rampaging the streets of New York, people come to our churches knowing that there is real evil out there. Policies which seek to demonize human beings because of their immigration status, or the color of their skin, or their gender or affiliation, their sexual orientation. But there are also demons inside the human heart as well. Addictions to people and places and things, addicted to doom scrolling and despair. We know overcoming the monster is not just for Frodo or Harry Potter. Battling the monsters within and without are part of our story too. So, you know, as I contemplated what to say to you this morning, this very first Sunday, and given the fact that you and I are beginning a new chapter of ministry together, I could not help but think that another chapter of American history will be unfolding in just a scant 8 days when the nation will inaugurate a new president. This is a man who is a convicted felon whose list of offenses is as familiar to most of us as the lyrics of the national anthem. And much ink has been spilled about how did this happen. But one of the reasons is simply this: human beings are drawn to stories because they are more emotionally compelling than facts. And frankly and tragically, the truth. If a story that is being spun is more relatable, more emotionally captivating than the other story, even if that other story is based in facts and the truth, guess which one gets our attention? On the news, or sadly, our votes. So one of the lessons from November's election I believe, is that those of us who are opposed to the incoming administration's policies must figure out how to write and tell a better, more compelling story. When I came to visit you in November, I picked up a copy of your bicentennial book, All Souls at 200. And I have to say, it is a beautiful collection of writing that reads like a really good novel. From the telling of that story, I, and perhaps you, can see patterns emerging that have shaped the culture and identity of All Souls for 200 years. There's the origin story, your heroic origin story of William Ellery Channing riding into town and delivering a message that would captivate the hearts and minds of New Yorkers that gave rise to this church. And then there's the rise of fascism and the demonic forces unleashed by the Second World War and the Holocaust and the ways in which this congregation responded to that. Fast forward all the way to that terrible day on September 11th, and the monsters that befell the nation that day and beyond. So many stories, so many. And even in a well-researched book like All Souls at 200, there are stories that haven't been told, which couldn't be told. In every institution, whether a family or Congress or church, there are secrets in the walls and unrealized dreams that haunt the rooms. What I do as an interim minister is to listen to those stories. They are all stories worth telling. Whether about the time that you wept in the pew when a thought from a sermon or a piece of music left you deeply moved, or the time you almost left the church out of hurt or anger, but you stayed. I want to know about your dreams and your disappointments, the ways in which the church saved you, the ways in which it failed you. So one of the hopes I have in our short time together is to hear as many stories as possible. What you love about this place. What inspired you? What frustrates you? Because as the poet said this morning, in this morning's reading, when jarred by life, we might unravel the story we tell ourselves and discover the story we are in, the one that keeps telling us. Now, I have a confession to make. Because most ministers have a savior complex, it's tempting for me to want to try to fix everything you bring to me. But alas, that is your work to do. My job is to provide you with my experience, expertise, insight, wisdom, and whatever tools I have to help you do just that. And what can happen, what should happen, is hearing the stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, the inspiring, and helping to interpret those stories in the light of your history, your identity, and who you wish to become. I've always loved this quote from Rumi. You probably have heard it before, but I think it bears repeating when he writes in The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. We know this about healing hearts and families and institutions and a nation, that nothing can be healed until it is revealed. I welcome each one's story. And at the same time, as we journey through this time together, we must remember the wisdom from the TED Talk by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, whose TED Talk is entitled "The Danger of a Single Story." Because it's tempting to believe that our story is the only story. But Adichie reminds us of this. She says, all of these stories make me who I am. But to insist on only these negative stories is to flatten my experience and to overlook the many stories that formed me. The single story creates stereotypes, and the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. Like the overlapping Venn diagrams, the stories that make up who we are multifaceted. And the story I am most interested in as one of your ministers and as a pastor is that of your spiritual life, both personally and as a congregation. What is the state of your soul? And what moral lessons have you learned from All Souls? As a result of your relationship with this church and its teachings, have you felt better able to expand your capacity for curiosity, for wonder, for gratitude, for awe? And then, beyond your personal experience, how do you take what you have learned here and embodied here out into this bruised and broken world of ours, strengthened by inspiration and the work of your fellow congregants to confront injustice and combat systems of oppression? The stories worth telling are not only the ones of triumphs and successes, but the hard stories too, as we mine them for meaning and learn from them. I keep telling myself this as we grapple with a new presidency and a new administration. I'll be telling you the same thing about our congregation as together we turn the page to one that is still empty and waiting. Our shared story is yet to be written. But at the end of my time with you, I'll do my best to write a narrative, hopefully with a really compelling opening line. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Or perhaps all of this happened more or less. Whatever that is that captures All Souls, January to June 2025, in all its mystery and yes, in some of its messiness. It's the story that right now has a beginning, and will have a middle, and will have an end, just like life. It's the story we know, the one that keeps telling us. All Souls, you have so much health to build on, so much strength to rely on, so many hopes and dreams yet to realize. You can feel good. You can feel so good about this next chapter of your life. In fact, that reminds me of a song. Because it is a new dawn, it is a new day, it is a new life for me and for you. That song made famous by Nina Simone and hit it. It's a new day.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me. Ooh, and I'm feeling good. Fish in the the sea, you know how I feel. River running free, you know how I feel. Blossom on the tree, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, and I'm feeling good. Dragonfly out in the sun, you know what I mean, don't you know? Butterflies all having fun, you know what I mean. Sleep in peace when day is done, that's what I mean. And this old world is a bold world and a new world for me. Yeah, for me. Stars when you shine, you know how I feel. Scent of the pine, you know how I feel. Freedom is mine, and I know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me. Whoa, 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 whoa.